Okay. Now, looking at the final section of the bracket, we've looked at the East, the West, the South. Now we're taking a step down to the Midwest, in which Michigan is the number one team in the entire conference. Michigan's the number two team in the entire country. And as per usual, they will play the winner of 16 seeded UMBC and 16 seeded Howard, which will happen on March the 17th. Michigan is 17-1 in their last 18 games prior to the tournament. The only game they lost was to the number one team in the country, the Duke Blue Devils. So, incredibly impressive resume over the past couple months. They did lose the Big Ten final to Purdue. The shocker 7 seed in the tournament beat the 1 seed Michigan. Quite a remarkable game, actually. That only really says much about Purdue. Michigan is a fantastic team. Purdue, just don't sleep on Purdue. They've got a top 10 offense in the entire country and the number one defense in the entire country. They're extremely accurate, and one of their extremely accurate players was the Big Ten Player of the Year. So their resume on paper is absolutely phenomenal. If either UMBC or Howard want to have a chance at taking down Michigan, they should start finding God. The one problem with Michigan's offense is that they turn it over a little bit more than the average top two team over the past 30 years. If they can get the turnovers under control, Michigan can easily win the entire tournament and win the national basketball championship. They force opponents into bad shots, meaning they recover the ball a lot, they rebound it, and then they turn that into more points. Their defense is fantastic. As I said, number one in the country. Not many teams can say that they boast the number one defense in the country at any given point. The next matchup is the 8 seed Georgia Bulldogs versus the 9 seed St. Louis. Now, this is a very interesting matchup as well. Georgia's momentum is mid, but they did beat ranked Alabama during their final stretch leading into March Madness. In the tournament of the SEC, they did lose to the 15-seeded Ole Miss Rebels, which was kind of a shocker. Ole Miss did go on to have a pretty solid tournament run, but still, Ole Miss is a bad team. Georgia's ranked 33rd in the country, and they have the third highest scoring offense in the country. They also are 10th in offensive pace in the entire country, so they have one of the quickest offenses, quickest in means of scoring and quickest in means of moving in the entire nation. They're also top 10 in the country in blocks and bench scoring, meaning that their defense is strong and their bench players are equally as strong. The one thing about them is that they cannot hold their own against winning opponents sometimes. They're pretty much a coin toss against solid opponents. If you put them up against the top 10 teams if you put them up against 10 random teams from the top 25 teams right now, they'd probably win 5 of those games and lose another 5 of those games. Georgia on any given day can pair up with the best, but on any given day can also pair up with the worst. But still an incredible team. St. Louis slowed down to end the year, had 3 kind of unjust losses for how good they've been, but they did have an 18-game winning streak prior to that. They were upset in their tournament as the number 1 seed, losing by 1 point to the number 4 Dayton Flyers. They're the 31st best team in the country, so they're 2 spots ahead of Georgia despite having a lower seed. Their 2 and 3 point percentage shots are some of the best in the entire nation. And their field goal defense is stellar, some of the best you'll ever see, which means that when a team goes up for a medium or a long-term shot, it's a good chance that St. Louis is going to get up and prevent it. They also have center Robbie Avila, who is nicknamed Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. If you know anything about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and how dominant he was in the NBA, then you know why this nickname makes sense, because he's white. He's Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He's the cream of the crop. Everybody knows that. But that kid is amazing. He's an incredible center. He's one of the only centers in the league who can shoot threes, so he's an all-around threat. He is a serious threat to solid teams. The one thing about St. Louis is that they're not very good at turnovers, and they're not very good at rebounding. So they don't rebound well. When they miss a shot, they don't get it very often, and when the other team misses a shot, they don't recover it very often. And they give up a lot of turnovers. So a lot of mistakes on the St. Louis team, but not enough mistakes to turn them into a team that's not worthy of the spot. St. Louis has been fantastic. So keep that in mind. The next game out of the Midwest is Texas Tech versus Akron. 5-seeded Texas Tech and 12-seeded Akron. Texas Tech is a very interesting team. They have 3 straight L's. They've lost three straight games coming into March Madness, but they were pretty solid prior to that. They lost to ranked Iowa State in the first round of the Big 12 tournament. They're ranked 19th overall in the country. Their 2 best players, all-conference guard Christian Thompson, is injured, and TJ Toppin, an ESPN Top 100 player, is injured. Texas Tech is missing their 2 best guys. And that is very, very bad. That creates some serious upset potential here. They're 5-6 versus top 25 opponents, and they still look kind of solid without their top 2 players. Solid enough to make a deep run? Absolutely not. But anything can happen. It's a solid team. Like I said, it's true. Without them, obviously they look worse, but it is a solid team. There's a reason that they're the 5th seed in the Midwest. There's a reason they're in the top 25 best teams in the country. Akron, on the other hand, is 19-1 in their last 20 games. 19 wins and 1 loss. And their only loss is to Troy, who, if you were paying attention to the last video, made March Madness. They won their tournament, and they played kind of decent. I mean, they won the games, so obviously that was great, but they didn't look dominant. Their net ranking is 54th out of 365, and their offense is very impressive. They've got 9 players with 6 or more points per game. They are, however, the shortest March Madness team, meaning height-wise, their team is on average the smallest. They do, however, have 11 3-pointers per game, which is top 10 in the entire country among all teams, the best and the worst, top 10 in the whole country. And they're also top 50 in the country in 2-point percentage and 3-point percentage. So their shooting is miraculous. I mean, this team is fantastic at shooting. Given they haven't played many teams as good as Texas Tech, if any at all, but for the teams they have played against, I mean, if they can get a guy open, this is a seriously winnable game. And unfortunately, Texas Tech is missing their best guard and their best player. So a lot of people are thinking Akron's going to take this one. The truth of the matter is Texas Tech is still a better team, even without TJ Toppin and Christian Thompson. They have more experience in games against top 25 opponents. They still look solid without those 2 players. But this is not a game that Akron should be completely left out of. Their momentum is fantastic. Their shooting is fantastic. Their offense is fantastic. And their 3-point shooting is one of the best in the entire nation. So that's room for some mid-major upset potential. But where I'm really excited is the matchup between Alabama and Hofstra. The Alabama Crimson Tide versus the Hofstra Pride. The Pride versus the Tide. A serious matchup between one of the best teams in the country and one of the most hopeful teams in the country. Alabama's 9-2 in their last 11 games, with wins over ranked Tennessee and ranked Arkansas. They lost in the SEC tournament to 15-seeded Ole Miss by 1 point. So remember when I said that loss to Ole Miss was pretty embarrassing for Georgia? It's a little bit worse for Alabama. Their net ranking is 18th in the entire country. They bank heavily on 3-point shooting. Their 3-point shots are not to be messed with. If they land their shots at the rate they have been, this will be an easy sweep for Alabama. They don't force much turnovers, though, meaning their defense is pretty calm. It's tame. It doesn't go for those big steals. Their rebounding is fantastic. One of the top in the SEC conference, which is, by the way, one of the tougher conferences in all of college basketball. They're one of the best in rebounding in an entire conference. So expect, even if they miss those threes, to be able to recover the ball pretty efficiently. But there's a reason why maybe that will be a little bit harder for them today, or in this game against Hofstra. I'll get into that later. They allow 83.5 points per game. That is a lot of points to let other teams score. As you might be thinking, how is a team 18th ranked in the country if they allow teams to score 84 points a game? But that's because they score 92 points per game. Alabama's really good at scoring a lot of points, but they're not too good at preventing a lot of points either. So Hofstra, 7 straight wins, but before they won 7 straight, they lost 5 straight. So after that lack of momentum, losing 5 straight, looking like they might lose the 3rd seed in the CAA, they picked it up and they won 7 straight games, including the tournament. Although in the CAA tournament, they didn't play any of the top opponents. They were the number 3 team. The number 2 seeded Charleston Cougars and the number 1 seeded UNCW Seahawks both lost to the Campbell Camels and the Towson Tigers before Hofstra even had a chance to play them. So the teams they played, Monmouth and Towson, 2 good teams, but not either of the teams they were expecting. They were ranked 88th in the country, which is the highest in the CAA, despite being the 3rd seed. They beat Pitt and Syracuse, and almost the University of Central Florida. UCF, keep in mind, is in March Madness, and Hofstra almost beat them. Pitt and Syracuse were preseason picks to potentially make March Madness, but ended up falling a little bit short. Still impressive wins, because those are major teams. Hofstra is a mid-major team. Now, the reason this is scary for Alabama is because Hofstra is in the making of a Cinderella story. Even if they don't win, this is still a Cinderella story. Speedy Claxton is the head coach of Hofstra. He was an alumni of the Hofstra Pride, and he went to the NBA, left the NBA, and went to coach his alma mater and took them to March Madness. That in itself is a Cinderella story, and that creates momentum that wouldn't be there in any normal circumstance. They also have the CAA Player of the Year, Cruz Davis. Cruz Davis averages over 20 points per game. Him and Preston Ed Mead, the freshman, the star freshman at Hofstra, averaged a combined 36 points per game and 9 assists per game. That's impressive. That's an impressive stat. And here's where the rebounding of Alabama becomes in jeopardy. Hofstra has a 7-foot center. And what do centers do really well? They put their hands up and they grab the ball. Alabama's going to struggle rebounding against this Hofstra team. So if Alabama's accurate with their shots, count on them to win. But if they're not, and they can't rely on that rebounding, maybe this is going to be a closer game than we thought initially. 6-seeded Tennessee, on the other hand, is going to play the winner of 11-seeded Miami of Ohio and 11-seeded SMU. Tennessee themselves are 4 wins and 4 losses in their last 8 games, which is solid with their schedule, but not that impressive. They lost in the tournament to Vanderbilt by 7. Remember, Vanderbilt ended up going to the finals of the SEC tournament. So to lose by 7 to them is not the worst thing in the world. Their net ranking in the country is 20th, the 20th best team. Excuse me. They attack the paint well, and they grind down defenses very well. They're very efficient in working into defense on the inside, managing easy shots, moving through the defenses like a snake. It's something they're really good at. They're very good at second chance points, which are essentially points that you get from when a player goes up for the shot, misses, and then Tennessee rebounds their own team's shot, passes it back out, and then shoots it again. And they're very good at making those second chance shots. What they're not good at is their free throw percentage. They only shoot 70% from free throws, which is an issue. So if you look back at the resumes of Miami and SMU, if they're both good about fouling, they can have a chance to win this game. Because 6 versus 11 is not a crazy upset. It's a big upset. It's not a crazy upset. If either SMU or Miami of Ohio can bank on not fouling, or, well, I suppose fouling Tennessee a lot would be a positive for them, because that would mean that instead of getting 2 points from their possession, they would only end up getting 0 or 1 on most of those free throw attempts because of their lackluster free throw percentage. But that's up for interpretation. Depends on how you want to look at it. They're also bad about fouling. They get fouled a lot, which is bad, because as you might know, if you get 5 fouls, you get kicked out of the game. And if their whole team's pretty bad about fouling, they're all going to stop being physical once they reach 4 fouls, because they don't want to get fouled for the 5th time and get kicked out. It also allows for a lot of easy points for Miami or SMU if they get to shoot a lot of free throws. So keep in mind that Tennessee's a very strong team with some flaws, but I don't know if their flaws are big enough for them to lose to SMU or Miami of Ohio. The 3 seed out of the Midwest is Virginia, and the 14 seed out of the Midwest is Wright State. Not much is known about Wright State, which is why I'm going to talk a bit about it. But just a second. Okay, here we go. Virginia is 13-2 in their last 15 games. The only team they've lost to since January is Duke, the best team in the country. They lost the ACC Finals by 4 to that same Duke team. 4 points, very impressive. They're ranked 12 out of 365. Their scoring and rebounds are both top 20 in the country. And unlike any other team in the entire nation, good or bad, Division One, they have scored 80 plus points 20 times, which is incredibly impressive. Their bench, meaning the players that sit on the bench and then get subbed in for less minutes, but still a significant amount of time, those players are almost as good as their starters, which means they are all around an incredible team. Wright State, on the other hand, is 7-1 in their last 8 games and 5-0 in their last 5. They won their conference tournament as the 1 seed, so they were expected to win, and they won. They played well. Their net ranking is 127th, so about 10 times worse than Virginia, if that's how you would like to put it, in means of teams ahead of them between them. Whatever. Their pace on offense is below average, but they score a lot of points, which is a very unique statistic. In fact, they are 16-0. They're undefeated when they've scored 80 or more points. That's unbelievable. That's impressive. But they are horrendously bad at shooting behind the arc, which means any shots that come behind the 3-point line, they are bad. Very bad. So keep that in mind. If they try to go up for threes a lot this game, try to out pursue or outlast Virginia from the deep line, it's not going to happen. Another incredible stat for this Wright State team, they won 3 out of the 4 games where their opponents scored 90 points or more, meaning anytime their opponents scored 90 points or more, they matched it and beat it. They're off, even though they play below average paced, they manage to match high scoring games. And if they can keep up with Virginia, they could pull ahead at the end as well, maybe force an overtime. It's a long shot, but you never know. Second to last game here of the entire tournament is 7-seeded Kentucky versus 10-seeded Santa Clara. Okay, I apologize. I had to step away for a moment, but I'm back. I don't know if there was a cut in the audio, but hopefully that's back to normal. Kentucky is rather unpredictable as of recent. They have some great wins against some great teams, but they have some pretty weird losses, some pretty strange L's. They lost in their tournament to the best team in their conference and the number 4 team in the country, Florida, by only 8 points. So not too bad. Their net ranking is 28th in the entire country. They're very effective in moving quickly and slowing opponents down. So combine those both, and Kentucky can do some serious damage on offense. They've got some great scoring, and their 3-point percentage is pretty solid. They do commit a lot of fouls, and their players take some pretty strange shots. But that comes from the fact that their team is young. They have a young roster, and their discipline is questionable because of that, but their skill is great. I mean, they have the skill any day to compete with some of the best teams in the country. They proved it this season, but their discipline is not quite there. And if they can get that in check for the tournament, I think their chances of winning this game and beyond become a lot higher. Santa Clara, on the other hand, one of the stunning teams in March this year. Nobody really expected them to make it. They were 13-3 in their last 16 games, and the only teams that they've lost to since then are Gonzaga and St. Mary's, both teams that are ranked high in this year's March Madness tournament. They did take down St. Mary's in the conference tournament, but lost to Gonzaga in the finals. Their net ranking is 40th in the entire country, and they have 7 players with 30 or more three-pointers. So their three-point shooting is incredibly effective. They're tall and deep. They are offensive-minded, and they have 8 players with 18 minutes per game or more, which means they rely heavily on their top 8 players, but not as much the rest of their bench players or their starters. It's about 5 starters and 3 bench players. That's most of their rotation right there. So if those 8 players get stagnated against Kentucky, they start to stall. It might start to be a more lopsided game for the Kentucky. They score more points than Kentucky and allow less points than Kentucky. So if that discipline becomes a factor there, and Kentucky starts to try to take shots that they can't make just to try and narrow the gap, then Santa Clara might be able to pull away. But keep in mind, they are tall and very deep. Deep meaning they are disciplined. They have a very good scope of what needs to get done. And tall meaning they're tall. The players are pretty tall, that always helps. They played Gonzaga 3 times this season, and not once were they blown out. And keep in mind, Gonzaga is one of the best teams in the country. Santa Clara was not blown out 1 time. They played well all 3 times. So if you were wondering about Santa Clara's ability to shape up against top opponents, they have experience against Gonzaga. They may have lost those games, but they definitely looked better than a team that would have just lost on any given day. Iowa State, the 2 seed out of the Midwest versus the 15 seeded Tennessee State. Iowa State had a solid end of the season. They lost in the tournament to Arizona by 2. They put up a great fight in that tournament. To lose to the second best team in the country, second or third best, I always get them mixed up with Michigan. They lose to that team by only 2 points is incredibly impressive. They're ranked 6th in the entire nation, almost a 1 seed, just 2 spots off. They're built on defending and guarding the perimeter. Their defense is fantastic. Their guarding is fantastic. They are the nation's best at forcing turnovers. They're the best team in the entire country when it comes to making other teams give up the ball. Their top 2 players lead the country in multiple offensive factors, like 3-point percentage and rebound percentage. The one thing about Iowa State that does get a little shaky is their half-court defense, meaning when it comes time to defend outside of the 3-point line, their defense is a little bit troublesome. So if Tennessee State can get their 3-point shooting together, maybe they'll have a chance of making this game closer. But Tennessee State in specific is 9-1 in their last 10 games and is on a 6-game win streak. So an impressive past month or so for Tennessee State. They won their conference tournament as the 1 seed, and they played pretty great. Games weren't too close. They deserved it, and they delivered. They're ranked 172nd in the entire country, and their top 2 guards averaged a combined 35 points per game. Pretty good. However, the top 2 players on their team are pretty much the only threats on the team. Their defense is pretty trash, and it's easy to get around. It's easy to move around, manipulate, and if Iowa State has 2 players that lead the country on offensive factors that can continue to make that happen, then it's lights out for Tennessee State. But Tennessee State does force turnovers at a high rate, which is good. They make the other team give up the ball, which means this is going to be a very turnover-oriented game. There might be possession after possession after possession after possession where these teams just keep forcing turnovers. Because like I said, Iowa State is the nation's best when it comes to forcing turnovers, and Tennessee is pretty strong at it as well. So that's all I've got for March Madness. If you got any questions, I assume if you're watching this video, you know who I am. Hit me up. The tournament starts on the 19th. I'm going to send out a message right before the brackets close, just to make sure everybody's got them filled in. But good luck. Godspeed. I hope my research helps you. I hope that my bracket is the best, considering that I've spent 842 hours making not only this presentation, but actually watching the games. I'm fans of teams that I didn't know existed at the start of the season. But that's it for me. Best of luck. Any questions, hit me up. Good luck. Godspeed.